Entrepreneurship in Nigeria today is not what it used to be. Now, the majority of Nigerians used to be entrepreneurs, but before the colonization era, a lot of Nigerians were majorly involved in trading. The wealthiest at the time were the traders, and even before money was accepted as a legal tender, people exchanged what they had in surplus for what they did not have. Entrepreneurship is widely understood as the process of starting and owning a business that provides goods and services to people in exchange for money. Now, Nigeria was full of people with a business mindset, and Nigerians always had a high moral standard and value system for doing business. But are those moral values still with us today? Now, we have to discuss this particular issue, two women entrepreneurs in the house. We have Habiba Manzo. She's a creative director of Bella Cray. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, we also have Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova. She's an entrepreneur and a politician, and she joins us on the program as well. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is a women's affair, and I love the diversity. Yeah. Politician, entrepreneur, and then we have another entrepreneur, a very young entrepreneur. So it's a delight having the both of you in the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with, entrepreneurship in Nigeria, and this is for you, Mrs. Dorothy. And now, how would you rate entrepreneurship in Nigeria?
Right now, we don't have a strong entrepreneurship as we ought to have for this century, given the kind of opportunities that there are, especially globally, including at the level of technology. We should be way ahead of where we are now. Unfortunately, there are many things militating against investments in Nigeria. And so even when people desire to start, a service provision line, they are confronted head on with issues like power, low power generation, insecurity, and then, we have poverty that is ridden in the minds of very many. And so if you're starting a business, you have to be on ground to put your hands and eyes on it, so people don't just do away with the business by embezzling funds or not keeping to standard in production and so on. And so we have a long way to go to be able to build this entrepreneurship. And especially we know, like you said, pre-colonial times and even the colonial times and early independence, women were still very active in commerce. It is, it fell apart as the military began to take control of the nation, and then we witnessed a huge, huge gap because there's deep marginalization of women at that point.
Now, let's take a look at this. We have a lot of factors mitigating women to get into that space of being an entrepreneur. And still, we have a lot of women who have been able to maneuver, just like the young entrepreneur we have in the studio, have been able to, look at it against all odds, make a living, and, paint a name for herself, becoming an entrepreneur. So what are some of these major factors that are mitigating people, especially women, and how do you put all of this together and say, yes, I can just kickstart, and yes, we'll manage as time goes on? Now, this is speaking from experience. Let's hear from me.
Okay, like you said, from experience, from personal experience, I would say you decide what you want to do, and then you forge on. So that zeal for you to do it is what should keep you going, regardless of what the society does to you, regardless of the forces, because whether you're a man or a woman, in business, you would always have forces against you. So you have to keep pushing. What you want is what matters, not what the society wants you to do or what you think sits well with them or doesn't sit well with them. As long as you know you want to do this, you have the zeal to do it, just go ahead and do it. So you have to have that zeal for you to push through, because whether there are societal factors, infrastructural factors, economical factors, and probably religious factors to an extent, they would come as a man or a woman, depending on what you go on to do. So you need that zeal. You need to be, you need to be ready for all of it, and then tell yourself, this is what I want to do. Nobody else matters. Nothing else matters. And I go ahead to do it, regardless of how long it's going to take me to get it done.
So was there any point in time you wanted to quit? Like you felt it was like, I'm done?
Genuinely, no. Not I'm done. I think I like challenges. So that's what keeps me going. I get tired. I have days where I want to take a break, like I shut out completely, no social media, no work related, no emails, nothing. But not done, because I still have that goal in me every single day. I sleep with a notepad under my pillow, excuse me, because I always have ideas and things running in my head every single day. So I've never had that thought of quitting at some point, regardless of how hard it's gotten. I get tired, so I take a break, because I'm human. And if I don't refuel, I won't get going.
I think I should take notes from this.
All right, now, Mrs. Dorothy, now, growing up, our parents wanted us to actually have, professions and careers, like being a doctor or, a pilot and all that. But these days, if you look at the young generation, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to own their business, even if it means, having a 9-to-5, they also want to own their business. What do you think, drives people from the safety of employment to being entrepreneurs?
Maybe employment is no longer that safe to start with, We can't always depend with a growing population size for people to make jobs for us. We have to begin to create jobs ourselves and then open opportunities to carry other people along. And the population in Africa and Nigeria in particular is very youthful. So if we're going to wait for all the millions of young people to get jobs in the aviation industry or get file-moving jobs in the ministries, they're going to just remain unemployed. And there is so much going for the generation now to be creative. There are opportunities, international markets. You don't even need to move from your room to be able to do some of these businesses. And so you can sit in the comfort of your home. You can be developing cartoons for Cartoon Network, and so on. And you can be packaging adverts for people in Japan. Now you are in Nigeria, So we can create our own job opportunities these days. And so we don't have to wait for anybody to create it for us. And that is the encouragement that, young people must have for this specific era. Gone are the days when you would graduate and 3 jobs will be waiting for you with a car and an apartment.
But how favorable are government policies towards entrepreneurs?
Okay, that is again, something else. I think even though people pay lip service to how much enabling environment they are willing to create. But in practical terms, we don't see anything. Nigeria is signatory to the ILO, and then we try to move with these conventions, but the environment itself, we've not seen demonstrated political will to enable people thrive in entrepreneurship. And women, I tell you, are seriously more disadvantaged than men are. There are women who, of course, may operate from a privileged position because they've had backgrounds that put them, at an advantage than most other women. But most women are hit. If you're going to own your property, you're going to own your business, you're going to... In fact, there are men that you will employ and all they are targeting is under the pants, because they just can't fathom that you really mean business and that's what you are there for. And there are men who will feel intimidated by women who are entrepreneurs and who are making it big. And society creates taboos, around ownership, around control of resources and access to women. And so women like her, could easily be labeled, in a way that is negative, And the government is not doing much to make sure that these social constructs are challenged, are pulled down, because most of them are beneficiaries anyway of the status quo.
Now, we've talked about policies, as a politician, of course, you're closer to some of these policies that have worked for young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs already in the limelight in Nigeria. What are some of these policies that have worked for entrepreneurs, and what other policies should the government be working on to make it easy for entrepreneurs to emerge in Nigeria, more entrepreneurs, basically?
You know, I think that we may talk policies from now till tomorrow, but if we don't put the practical things on ground, you know, we're still going to be lagging behind. Why should we have a situation where materials produced in Nigeria are more expensive than the ones imported? Because the cost of production is high. I'm sure that, you know, she has to run her generator 247, and the diesel is getting more and more expensive. And then when you are running business and you don't have your own building, the landlords are going to chop your fingers off, especially if they see that you are making it. Every year they will hike the rent. What is government doing to make sure that there are certain controls so that people are not exploiting entrepreneurs? We thank God that she hasn't been discouraged. But I know people who came back from outside the country to start something, and they ran back. All these 10% cuts that you have to give, the arduous registration you go through for your business, and the several levels of taxation. All of those need to be addressed if we want entrepreneurship to thrive. And then the mother of all, we have to make sure that our currency is stable and that it gives us a bargaining chip, you know, to be able to compete with other markets around the world.
Okay, now Habiba, most entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship, you know, is actually marred by poor knowledge of, you know, how to run a business and also how to execute that business. You know, how are you able to maneuver through all this?
I like to learn. I like to learn, and I learn by experience mostly. So I learn in classrooms, yes, but I love to learn by experience more, because you have firsthand of what it is like when you do that thing. Now, with every experience of every, let's say, production I do or everything I handle, I pick a thing or two to improve on for the next step. So for me, it's a gradual growth with everything, regardless of, I am currently running a degree on entrepreneurship and business management. And trust me, what is in classroom is completely different from what is outside. What is in the books is entirely different. So if you have to be in that field, whatever field of business, entrepreneurship you're in, you have to focus, you have to put your mind that you're going to learn. Learn how to work with people, learn how to manage people, not what is written in the books, ABC. Actually relate with these people. Know that there are different categories of people, different types, characters, habits. I mean, you'd come across various types of people, from your, let's say, vendors down to your clients, for example. So you have to learn to know how to address people properly. You have to learn to know how to relate with them. Learn how to bargain, for example. All these things, yes, they will teach you in books, but when you go into the market, it's different. So yes, learn by experience. Be willing to learn, open to change, and unlearn some habits.
Okay, you talked about, you know, taking it one step at a time.
Yes.
You know, if you were to advise, you know, business-minded people with the get-rich-quick mentality, because someone decides to open a business today and they expect to be rich tomorrow, you know, what would you say?
There's nothing like get rich quick, if I'm being honest, except of course it's a Ponzi scheme. Because if you want to build something, you have to take time and dedication to do that. So there's nothing like get rich quick, except you can do magic today. A snap of a finger, you have millions. You have to work for it. And if you want to work for it, you have to put in the might. And if you want that thing to stand, you have to make sure the foundation of the business entirely is solid. I mean, you can do the get rich quick, but it won't last. And that's not you building something.
Okay, now, Mrs. Akanova, you know, you've worked with a lot of young people, young entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And of course, you're still currently working with a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of people say that young people are not ready to be patient, just like she said, the get-rich syndrome. You know, young people have it. And one of the problems pointed out was the fact that they're not ready to learn, they're not ready to take one step at a time. Do you think that, you know, there's an advice you can give to young people this morning who want to venture into entrepreneurship and probably it stares them into the next level of their life?
Yeah, little beginnings are very important in life. Like she said, you know, you have to start from the basics and build gradually. That's the way businesses are built. Not by, I know people just want to do something huge for a start. When they bring you a business proposal, you look at it, can you manage this? You've not managed anything before, you know. And then in their whole life, they have never made 10 naira, 11 naira. So you keep wondering why they want to have 5 million to start a business. There are people that we have empowered, women, who started by selling charcoal, 5,000 naira. And today they are doing very well because the business has grown. So my advice to young people is that, you know, little beginnings are good. Let's start from somewhere and then let's be persistent and consistent and build. Like she said, there is no quick way of making money. In fact, I think it is erroneous for us to keep pushing the agenda through movies and other schemes that we have, like, you know, the lotto programs and the things we see on TV, like people getting rich overnight. Once those home videos started that trend, I knew long ago that we were going to have this kind of situation. So I banned home video in my house. My children, the oldest is 35 years. He's never sat in my house to watch a home video because I couldn't understand the millions they were mentioning 35 years ago, 25 years ago. It was just not practical to think that people could live in those kind of houses with our kind of, you know, setup.
Okay, well, just to connect it with what you said about, you know, people who want to start their businesses having huge, you know, business plans, you know, that might not actually make sense. Is that
At
why?
the start.
Yeah, at the start. Yes. Is that why there's so much difficulty in, you know, accessing loans from institutional facilities? Because even on our newspaper, that's Daily Trust newspaper, the lead stories about, you know, small and medium enterprises, and they're saying banks are rejecting applications. Is that one of the reasons, or are the banks broke?
And the banks broke. I think banks are broke, truthfully speaking, because that is why the naira is getting changed. Because the reason one of them they gave was that money was circulating outside the banking system. So if most of your money is outside the bank and you're going to the bank for a loan, you're not going to find a loan, you know, not in the numbers that we are requesting. And the other thing is that the interests are going to be, you know, throat slitting to the point that it won't make sense for you to get a loan from the bank. But the other thing is that there is a problem with how businesses are packaged sometimes. As a program designer myself, I can look at some proposals and tell you from the first 2 lines that this is not going to be possible because they haven't looked through very well how they have, you know, connected their goals and objectives and strategies and all the step activities that they need to implement to get there. So if you have the experience, at a glance, you can see that's not going to work. So when you see that, and you see that demand is not corresponding to production, you know, and so on, and that is where, you know, it matters, the opinion of the people. Some people haven't done any survey. They don't really know what their clients need, and then they want to go produce. They haven't checked about marketing strategies and how to ship their goods to the market. They haven't checked out their audience, and then they bring this proposal. Of course, it's not going to get funded.
Okay, so Habiba, now you run a business, I would say successful business, because of course you've put in it a lot of work and a lot of dedication to it. And moving on, you'd want to see yourself progress and help more people. Is there anything you're doing for the young people, you know, maybe training people who are working under you to guide them to the right path of being an entrepreneur in Nigeria?
Yes, there is absolutely. So one of my policies of my brands is that I particularly work with females. I'm quite particular about that. I do have male staff, they're just two. Have 3 companies, 2 male staff entirely. And when I say work with females, I don't come on social media to source. I go down the grassroots to source skills and build them. Because I feel if you leave tomorrow, you would be able to stand on your own. So yes, I feel my little give back is doing that. So we have, for example, out of school children that are teenagers, instead of hawking, they would work for a few hours. So work for a few hours and you go to school. Or you go to school and you come and work for 2 hours and you work twice a week. We have girls that have been married early with kids and a husband that can barely provide. We have a schedule. You work twice a week for 2-3 hours, 4 hours at most, and you get your monthly salary. So you're coming to work certain days for the entire month and you get paid. And then while we're working, because I work closely with all of my staff, I believe you tend to learn and pick 1 or 2 things because we have these conversations. So it's not just about, for me, it's not about coming to the city and, you know, building people, because I feel there are lots of other opportunities for the people in the city. They have access to at least social media. Those ones I work with don't. And a lot of times people go down there to get them to exploit them. So instead of that, you do the little you can. So you work with them, you build them. If they decide to leave, it's fine. But at least you've done your part. They leave with something.
I like the fact that she keeps saying, I work with, not they work for me. You know, those are different languages, you know. I hope you identify as a feminist like I do, because what you're doing is feminist work. You are empowering and changing lives and adding value, and you are undertaking a gender transformative agenda. And that is feminist, whether or not you go by that definition.
I believe it is, even if it doesn't have the tag.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been having an interesting conversation with female entrepreneurs in the studio, but we'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Okay, well, welcome back. And if you're just joining us, we're actually discussing entrepreneurship, you know, on Daybreak today with two beautiful women. Like Badia already said, it's a female affair, you know, this morning.
But that doesn't mean that the men cannot benefit from this conversation.
Of course. All right, so now let's move on to, you know, a story I actually saw today. And it talks about, you know, importers kicking because cost of containers from China has risen by 2.6 million naira. That's quite a huge sum.
Yeah,
what does that mean for importations, you know, or importers in Nigeria?
I think it means that they will soon be out of business. It will be good news if we are thinking and planning towards production, industrialization. That would be nice because it would make us look inward to say we don't want importation anymore. This is getting too expensive. Let us begin to produce by ourselves. I don't see the other bit playing out. What we are struggling to do is to keep importing instead of saying, oh, since it's getting this expensive, what are we importing that we cannot produce in Nigeria? Tell me, is it the toothpicks? Or is it the wrappers?
And you talked about enabling environment.
Yes, exactly. Those our textile industries. By the time we put all the millions together, we would have resuscitated them. Why don't we do that? We have entrepreneurs that are cobblers. They make shoes. We have people who can produce so many different things. Let us invest in those and let us scale up. And let us close all those importations. It will add value to our currency. It will add value to us as a people. Imagine all the engineers we produce in Nigeria. They are the ones who go out there to do the work. We have people who are designing cars. We have people who are designing perfume bottles. We have people out there who are doing amazingly great things. Why can't we have that environment here? Why can't we have the political will to begin to call on everyone who is doing something to scale it up? I had a gym, and the gym, we have to import everything that we use in the gym, including skipping ropes.
Really?
That's so embarrassing. We can produce in Nigeria. Of course, if the importation prices are this high, it is because the naira value has continued to plummet. And government is trying to see how to redeem the situation, but I don't think that we are engaging the right kind of people in the conversation to provide solutions for the nosedive that Naira is experiencing.
Okay, well, let's move on to Habiba. Now, we actually know that you're very young, but if you don't mind telling us, how young are you?
No, you're putting her on the spot.
No, how young is she?
This is TV.
I hear women
how
find
young?
it difficult to tell people their age. I think that's what's about to play out.
No, I don't think so. I don't think she has an issue.
Actually,
with
don't
it.
have a problem sharing my age.
Exactly.
I am 28.
Oh, amazing.
And your journey, how has it been so far? And what do you think people need to put into consideration to have a viable business?
The zeal and the legality.
Very important.
Very, very important.
Yes. Legality.
Because you can always cut corners. You can decide to double your profits. You can so many things, but it won't last. So as long as you have that zeal and making sure that your processes and your business is legal, and then you keep pushing, trust me, it might take time, but it would get there.
Okay, now some people, you know, want to start businesses, but capital is actually an issue, right, for them. So I want to ask, was it an issue for you?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. Why?
So, because I've never believed that capital was a reason not to start my business. So I personally did something called a test run when I started. And test run meaning I made pieces with fabrics I had, for example, at home. So I sewed myself and I wore them for myself. That's not you buying a bulk of fabrics. So I believe, I mean, the capital there was my energy and my will to do it. I did it and I wanted to test it. So gradually, obviously, it wasn't after day one, I wear it and someone likes it. No, it was a gradual process. Over time, people started liking those particular pieces. Then they started asking for them. Then I started making them in simple quantities, like 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3.
Just to make him unique.
Exactly. And then from there, it grew. So it was a gradual process, and believe me, it took years.
Oh, it took a lot of years. I think that she's young. She's 28 years young, and then it took a lot of years. That means she started quite early. I think that's the kind of encouragement we should be giving the young people. You know, you don't have to be 20 or 18 before you can start something.
Even if you're 30, you can start. As long as you
but
want to do it.
it's more like profitable if children are encouraged to start young.
Yes.
You know, you can imagine that we hide the scissors, we hide the needles, we hide the razor blades from children. So if your child is busy trying to cut and mend things, parents are going to be angry and upset and sometimes spank the child.
Like, give me that scissors right now.
And that is discouraging them to explore the kind of potentials that they have. You know, so we need to start early. If your child is an artist, for instance, and is painting the walls in your house, let them paint it. And, you know, they will look like ugly to you, but they are beautiful pieces that will become relish in the future. You know, so let's encourage children to pursue their passion. And the earlier they start, the better. If at 28 I started many years ago, then I can imagine, you know, how many years she's already put in. She must have started when she was still young.
All right.
At 15, actually.
Oh, wow. I wonder she said it took years. Because I was wondering.
Yeah, it's a decade plus.
Yeah. All right, so let's have your final thoughts, Habiba.
Overall, I would urge fellow young people to be true to themselves. I mean, you're the only person that matters when it comes to you. So be true to yourself. There's no figures. There's no amount of social media. There's no amount of trend. There's no amount of whatever it is that you're looking out to or want to be like that would help you be you if you don't look inwards. So be true to yourself. Decide what you want. Make sure every process is, and be willing to grow in the sense that learn, unlearn and relearn. Yes,
very important.
And you too, Mrs. Dorothy?
Yeah, we did have some little chit-chats during the break, so I want to put it out there that it is important to have these intersectionalities, you know, because I'm privileged to know that Habiba started from the NGO and she was working with communities, and you can see that her perspective is developmental in approach, and I'm telling you that her success is going to hit the skies, you know, very soon. And so I encourage young people to open up to learn, like she said, and beyond what they think they want to do, because those other pieces are the pieces that will eventually strengthen the dream that they are pursuing.
Okay, and I remember the last time you were here, we talked about, you know, women in politics and the case of Binani. So congratulations.
That's really good news,
Yes, it is. It is.
So I hope it doesn't get to the Supreme Court, you know.
Even if it does, we are hopeful that the Supreme Court will do what is right, because we truly do need women in politics, because then we will have policies that are good for women to run with.
Yes, indeed. All right, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure having you
Thank
here.
you.